Mr Speaker.
Shane Ardern.
Mr Speaker, rather than respond to that last call, I thought I might talk about the likely face of a new government if there were to be a change. What would it look like? What would it look like if we were to have an election and there were to be a change of government? It potentially would be a Green Labour-led coalition based on, well, who else is there? That's exactly right. Very good question. And what is it that they would do? And what is it that they've said that they would do? Well, let's touch on the areas that the Green Party in particular spent a lot of time campaigning on, environmental issues. Let's have a look at what some of their rhetoric in that area compared with what they actually do themselves has been like. For example, just recently there was an environmental award handed out to the Taranaki Regional Council for the fact that it has planted 90% of the stream banks in the Taranaki region, which incidentally add up to more kilometres than the whole coastline of New Zealand, in riparian margin planting, in consultation and in collaboration with other organisations, of course, including the farmers, who were the main leaders. What did the Greens say when they won that prize? What did they say? They said that they were an undeserving winner of that prize. In fact, there was I'm not going to name the gentleman because I don't want to malign the gentleman, but there was an academic scientist from Massey University that would have been a far better recipient of the prize. That's what Dr. Russell Norman said. And that pretty much sums it up, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker. What the Greens do is they talk about what they would like to see done, but they don't actually acknowledge those that do it. So let's have a look at some economic facts around some of what they've talked about. We know that the world population is growing. We know that New Zealand is a low-carbon producer of food. We know that there is going to be a growing demand for food. We know there are 2.5 million children a year that starve to death currently. We know there are 850 million people that are living below the poverty line around the world, and the Greens are going to impose a suite of policies on New Zealand agriculture that could only lead to one thing, and that is a decline in the production of healthy, wholesome, sustainable food. Where, Mr. Speaker, does that fit in with their philosophy of being a caring, compassionate group? Where, Mr. Speaker, does it fit in with Labour's policies? Well, if you look at what Labour have said they would do, in conjunction with their Green coalition partners, they would introduce a capital gains tax. They would introduce and immediately bring into effect an emissions trading tax on animal emissions. They would introduce higher income tax. They'd introduce higher company tax. They'd put a limit on livestock numbers in our agricultural industries. They'd limit the use of water. In fact, when you talk about the greatest potential for increasing food production and economic well-being, not only for New Zealand Incorporated, but for the feeding of the world as the population grows, they would introduce limits on water use, the #1 driver of production. They would introduce a limit on nitrogen use, on the basis, Mr. Speaker, that somehow or other this is going to stop environmental damage. Mr. Speaker, I have here 2 photographs which I'll table at the end of my speech. One of them is a dairy farm in Taranaki with a river running through it, riparian margin planted, and the other one is the Zealand Reserve here in Wellington. And, I invite members to take a look at these photographs and tell me which one they'd prefer to drink or swim in. Both of them are waterways within New Zealand. One is in the middle of an urban area, the other is in the middle of a dairy farm in Taranaki. And yet, if you listen to the Greens, this one apparently is pristine, unpolluted and without problem. That is nitrate. That's pure nitrate. That's what that algae is growing on, pure nitrate. And that one is in the middle, and that is not because of agriculture. And why? Well, there you go. Father Time over there, who's been in the Parliament for 35 years, says, and why? Well, I'll tell the member why, and that is because it has high nitrate running into that reservoir from the surrounding district, not from agriculture.
Order.
Mr. Speaker,
Order.
this would be a tragedy for New Zealand.
Expired.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker.
Point of order,
Mr. Order.
Shane Ardern.
I seek leave of the House, Mr. Speaker, to table 2 photographs demonstrating how...
Leave is sought for that purpose. Is there anyone opposed to that course of action? There is. Leave is not granted. Honourable Annette King.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The quote was so good.